Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan from the Leather Elves, and I am here with Jack Pine from High Redbird. Hey, Jack, how's it going?
It is going all right. Now I've got to be honest. So Rob and I, we sign on for these calls at the very beginning. Then we know they're going to start, and we have a little bit of a delay between when they know they're starting and when we're actually broadcasting. And in that window of time, I try to share it to a couple of different groups and different places. And it's always this light, anxious feeling of, okay, I got to get it done. I got to get it done. And then I finish it, and then I'm just waiting for it to start. And it's like, oh God, did I do something wrong? Was I supposed to do something else? I don't know. We're good.
I signed off. I know I did. It's gone. It will never come back again. And then Nick sends the little link, and I'm like, okay, this works. So, and then tonight, I'm not where I usually am. I'm down in South Carolina, so it's a little warmer. I get a few points for a little warmer. Um, but so this is the other, the struggle is real. That is it going to work from here? So welcome everybody. It's kind of exciting to see you all, and or not see you, but see your comments. Before we get started, Jack, I do have an important announcement. Are you ready? So one of our regular flock talkers had a birthday today. And so I think we all need to wish Frank Hewer a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Frank, up in New York. And it's great. Thank you for all your support. And we want to just hope that we're so excited that you're here with us on your birthday. So happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Frank.
All right. So what have we got for announcements, Jack? Or
Well, so
reminders?
for tonight, we are going to be going over traveling with your bird. So I think it's actually appropriate that Robin is traveling. But a couple of things we want to remind you before we get started. First of all, don't forget we do Friday Night Flock Talk every single Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You want to make sure that you like the Leather Elves page on Facebook. That's where we do them. You'll be able to get a notification whenever we get started. So that way you won't miss out on any of them. Now, if you do miss out on a Friday Night Flock Talk, we do share them in a couple of other places. We share them on the High Redbird group over on Facebook, and we also share them on the High Redbird YouTube channel. There's actually an entire playlist of all of the videos we've put together. You can binge watch them. I stopped counting when we exceeded 50 hours of content over there. But there's a lot of different things for you to watch over there. It's going to be covering topics such as conservation, training, behavior, medical care. And those are just the ones that me and Robin do on the Friday Night Flock Talk. There's also going to be additional videos on putting together different types of enrichment and providing for all kinds of different animals, not just the birds that we talk about here on Friday Night Flock Talk. We do want to remind you guys, if you have not already, both Robin at the Leather Elves and me over at High Redbird have an Instagram account that you guys can follow. We post flyers so you'll know what topics are coming up for discussion. And there's a lot of fun content as well, as you would expect to see on Instagram. A lot of things like different types of enrichment, different types of baby animals. I know a lot of people really enjoy that kind of stuff. So you definitely want to make sure that you go and check that out. Now, we do want to remind you, because Robin and I are both on the board of directors for the National Parrot Rescue and Preservation Foundation. I guess this is where I'm supposed to make the announcement. We have Nick behind the camera, who has a whole new set of sound effects that he has been experimenting with. And I think Nick's goal in the evening is to see how many times he can make Jack and Robin jump. Yeah, yeah. Amazingly enough, the animal sound effects don't phase me at all. I can roll with those, but it's the random ones that get me. Back to what I was saying. Robin and I are both on the board of directors for the National Parrot Rescue and Preservation Foundation, which will be putting together Parrot Festival January 28th through the 30th. This is a 3-day educational conference in Houston, Texas, where you can attend educational sessions with internationally acclaimed speakers on a variety of topics. You can attend our vendor hall, which is going to have vendors with all manner of parrot goods from across the country. And you just get the fun of being around like minded avian enthusiasts. So if you would like to find out more about that, you can visit www.parrotfestival.org. It is a lot of fun, so I definitely encourage you guys to check that out. And now, Robin, I know you have something special going on right now as well.
We have a couple of different things going on. We have a BOGO sale, and it's the whole month of November. You order one of an item and you get two. It does exclude seasonal items, skewer kits, and the emergency essentials kit, but it's a really good deal, and we've had a great response to that. Things are a little bit slower than they might be normally, but we're getting stuff out, and it's a chance to stock up for the holidays. And, we're going to talk a little bit about enrichment and how that can help sometimes get over some of the holiday humps. And, then there's always Santa. Santa shows up, and Santa is also here to talk to us about the Advent calendar. So we are doing a DIY avian Advent calendar. It needs to be ordered by, I think it's Monday, the 21st, so that we can get them to you by the 1st of December. Jack has willingly, and I don't know of a better word, willingly agreed, and excitedly agreed. How's that? To do a video for every day of December, to tell you how to use what comes in the particular box for that day. It's 25 3x3 boxes, and it's a way to work on some stuff with your parrots and create some new fun toys. So there's the DIY Avian Advent Calendar from the Leather Elves. So there's a lot going on. And then you still have time you still have time to to get in on the free toys for a year for 2022. What we are doing is any orders placed before January 1st of 2022 will be entered into a random drawing. Any orders over $50 will be entered into a random drawing, and you get a toy a month for a year. And you can choose to do that all at once, get your 12 all at once, or you can get them once a month. So that's going on too. It's crazy busy.
No, I'm really excited about the Avian Advent calendar because one, there's going to be a toy a day. So, and they're all going to be different. So, you're going to get a variety of different things for your birds. But for me, the really exciting part is all of the toys are going to be different. They're going to be put together in different ways. They're going to be designed to encourage you guys to hit different senses, different ways to interact with your bird. So, hopefully, it'll help people build a lot of skills. Unless, of course, you don't want to watch the video tutorials that we're putting together, and you don't have to. You can open up the box every single day and just put together whatever you want. So it really is a choose your own adventure sort of thing.
Yeah, you can be as creative as you want. Or you can, check out Jack every single who doesn't want to see Jack every single day? I mean, come on. It's a deal. So all right. So we have a pretty important topic. It's, something that we wanted to talk about because we feel like a lot of people find themselves in this situation at this time of year. And we wanted to cover some ideas for how to travel with your birds. So the first thing you got to do is get ready, right, Jack? So what do we need to do right out of the gate?
So you could argue there's a lot of different things to pay attention to when you're getting ready. I would say to focus on the things that are going to take the longest. What do you want to make sure you have enough time to work on? So for me, working on particular training is going to be one of the most important things for getting ready to travel. I'm going to want my birds to be able to step up, step down easily, get in their crate easily. Um, there's probably other things that would fall into that, but those are going to be the main things that come to mind. What do you think, Robin?
Well, and I agree with you on those two topics or those two ideas. The one thing I do want to say is if you're traveling for Thanksgiving and you haven't started on either of those, that's going to be a tough sell for me because it's really you don't want to rush it. There are sometimes your birds will pick things up right away and they'll move through those approximations and you'll have success. Other times it takes a little bit more time and you don't want to create a negative kind of atmosphere by trying to rush through that training. So if you've started, that's great. If you've done it already, even better. But don't push too hard because you want to be ready for next Thursday.
Yeah, no, that definitely won't work. This traveling with your bird, obviously, right now we're coming up on Thanksgiving. That's when we recorded this. But if you're watching this as a recorded video later, this could apply to any travel you're doing. If you guys watching right now want to make your plans for Christmas, that's why I thought training should be the first thing that we mentioned because depending on your bird and where it is starting, you could be needing to be working on this several months in advance.
Mhm.
And, as Robin and I were planning this session, this was one of the topics that came up. Please, please, please do not be the person that says, oh, it'll be fine, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. I grab my bird in a towel, I throw it in a carrier, and okay, we're off to Thanksgiving. Because I can tell you right now, nobody is going to be happy in that situation. Your bird is not going to be happy in that situation. You are not going to be happy in that situation. All of the people at the destination that now have to deal with a screaming bird are not going to be happy in that situation. And I can guarantee you, see, it throws you off if there's a screaming bird. And I can guarantee you there is going to be one person there that, oh, it's Thanksgiving and you brought an angry bird and a thing. Well, I don't know how many people you think that bird is going to feed, and they're going to think their joke is hilarious, and you are not because you are already going to be stressed to the breaking point. So don't do that. Just set yourself up for success. Figure out how far in advance you need to be working on these basic training aspects.
And just to backtrack a little bit, when Jack and I first started talking about this topic, we we really most of what we're talking about will focus on car travel, just because the airline travel with a bird is a moving target at this point in time. Things are changing. Each airline has different rules. The crate training, step up, step down, and a lot of what we're going to talk about is still important if you're traveling by air or by train, but you've got to make sure that you check the regulations with whatever mode of transportation. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is pertaining to car travel, but it's for the most, it doesn't mean you can't do these things with other modes of transportation. And I know Ray just asked about her bird getting car sick. Have you ever dealt with a bird like that, Jack?
So I've actually never dealt with a bird that has been car sick, and I've traveled in a car with multiple birds in their travel
Yeah.
carriers. I would say my suggestions to start, one, is there something about the way that you've traveled in the past that could be potentially problematic? If you're starting with an 8-hour road trip, that can be a lot for just about any bird.
Mhm.
So perhaps breaking that down into smaller trips, getting your bird used to going places regularly. It could be that there is an issue with how that travel carrier is moving in the car. So you may want to look to see if there are other ways to secure it. But remember, birds are used to being outside in trees on branches, which are going to be constantly moving in the wind. So that
Mhm.
definitely is something that can be manageable. It could be a visual thing. And if that's the case, I would look
Yes.
at possibly covering the carrier, obstructing view of things near windows. And of course, if any of those things don't help you out, I would say talk to your veterinarian about that. There
Mhm.
may be something that they can offer your bird to help assist with that. But that would be my starting point of a checklist of things that I would work on. Robin, is there anything else you can think of?
No, that was where I was going to, was with the visual. It may be the way you're positioning the crate in carrier in the car. And, because sometimes when you look out the window and things are going by, it may not be, something that's comfortable for your bird. It may not be. And then the other question I would have is whether this is a bird that, willingly goes into the crate or not. I see that Ray says it's only for 1 hour trips to the vet. And, so that's a short trip right there. So I would have you if you haven't talked to the vet already, I definitely would. And I would make sure that it's not, you know, I don't know about you, but for other animals that I've had that have been car sick, because I've never had a bird that was car sick before either, but I know people that do. And as long as their environment within the crate isn't super crowded, because that's part of it too. It's a new environment. It's if there's all kinds of stuff going on and too much stimulation, that's going to add to that anxiety and that stress, and it's not going to help with a bird that's car sick. So, Ray, I hope that that's at least a starting point, and but again, if going to the vet and talking to the vet about that, if it becomes a ongoing problem, I would suggest that. So,
Well,
all
and
right,
so that
go ahead.
actually leads into the next thing we wanted to discuss in getting ready
Mhm.
for traveling, which is making sure that your bird's health exam is up to date. I would say you definitely want to make sure that you have a healthy animal when traveling. A sick animal is only going to get sicker while trying to travel with them because you're going to be exposing them to additional stressors, changing their environment, changing the people that they see, uh, most likely changing things like their food, what time they get fed. All those
Mhm.
different aspects of a routine they're used to can have an impact on your bird. So just make sure they're in good health before that.
Yeah, you definitely want to look into that. And, people say, "Oh, well, I'm taking him somewhere where there aren't any other birds." And that really doesn't matter. It's more about having a good, the baseline. And then the other consideration there is when you get to where you're going, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but when you get to where you're going, if you've got a bird that started the journey sick, and then you get somewhere and it gets worse, you're going to need to see a vet that this bird is not comfortable with, is not, hasn't been to before. And you know, you never know if they're even going to be available where it's a holiday, if you're traveling on a holiday. So, yeah, I think that exam being up to date and making sure that your bird is in good health before you start is crucial.
Well, and we've discussed it can be a little bit difficult to find a vet that you are comfortable with and happy to work
Mhm.
with. You definitely don't want to try to find an emergency vet in a brand new city. That is going to be a whole lot of stress. There's nothing you can do to completely eliminate that risk, but knowing that your bird is healthy before your travel is going to be several steps in the right direction. Now,
Mhm.
as a baseline, we have recommended before that an annual exam, having your bird checked by a vet yearly, is going to be, really good practice. Um, but I want to make sure that we make this clear that you need to talk to your veterinarian about how often they want to see your bird because it may be a different schedule. If you have an older bird, a bird with chronic illness, a bird with other issues, they may want to see your bird more regularly. So make sure that you have that plan with your vet and you're following through with it.
Yeah, and I know this wasn't the next thing on our kind of outline for tonight, but in the comments, people are talking about a health certificate, and I think that's really important. That to find out if you're going to need that health certificate. And again, this is something you're not going to do the day before, the holiday. You're not going to do it the day before you travel. I promise you, the vet's going to go, ha ha, and hang up the phone, because this is something you need to plan ahead. And if you're going across state lines, is it legal to do this? You need to keep track of what states you travel through. 30 states prohibit possession of species listed on the Federal Endangered Species Act. So, you know, everybody goes, "Oh, it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to bother." They don't have a right to ask me those questions. They do,
Well,
and they could. Do you want to take that chance?
um, and so I was like, Robin, you jumped all out of order now. The other thing to remember is, yeah, that's talking about birds that are on the Endangered Species Act. There are other states that have rules against particular species. There are a number
Mhm.
of states that ban Quaker parrots because they're viewed as being potentially destructive to the environment. So there are too many birds that are kept as pets and places that you could be starting and places that you could be going to for us to cover every eventuality. But I would say you definitely want to check the legality of where you are, where you're going to, any states that you are going to cross through in between to see that you are going to be able to travel with your bird. You don't want to be caught in a poor situation like that.
Right, and, Adrian makes a good point that the health certificate does not negate the ESA, listing. So, the health certificate is one thing that you need to look at, and then you need to find out whether it's truly legal to transport your bird like that across state lines. So there's a lot that goes in there's a lot that goes into travel, and, it's kind of about the carrier, don't you think? But we're gonna get to that in a minute. Um, so bef before you go to all this trouble and it's not trouble because you wanna travel with your bird, let's get real honest here. Is your bird welcome at your destination?
Yeah,
You
and that
know?
that can mean so many different things. Because it could mean if you're going to hotels, if you're going to do a multi-day journey and stop at several hotels along the way, is your bird going to be allowed at those hotels? And finding that information can be a little bit difficult because not every hotel is going to have on its website, uh, oh yeah, no, we approve green cheek conures in a carrier. There, I can almost guarantee you that any hotel official you talk to, you say, "Oh yes, I have a conure that I'm going to be traveling with." You will immediately be asked, "What is that? Is that some kind of dog?" Um, they're not going to know usually. And if you do find the hotel that knows that, I actually want to know about them because that sounds really really exciting. I want to support that hotel chain, but make sure that you're checking with hotels that you're staying at along the way just to make sure that you're not going to run into any problems.
Mhm. And so the hotels are important because that's the I'm sleeping in my car. But the other thing that's important is although we adore our birds and we're thrilled to have them in our lives, um, do the in-laws, does the rest of the family think they're as great as you do? Are they okay with having them in their homes if you're going to a family home? So you want to think about those things too.
Right. And make sure you're getting an honest answer. Like you may get the answer of, yeah, I'm sure that's fine, but maybe they don't really want that bird in their home. So be realistic about what your birds are and what kind of imposition they could potentially be. I can tell you guys right now, I once had to travel over a holiday. We were going to my in-laws house and I was at the time hand feeding baby cockatiels, so I'm like they need to go with me. My father-in-law was like, no, I don't want birds in my house. They eat seeds and they throw the shells everywhere and they're going to make a terrible mess all over the entire house and they're going to fly all over the entire house. It's like, no, no, that is not what these are. These are babies. After explaining that and what was involved in taking care of them, what was involved in housing them, the situation was definitely different. But check to make sure that your family members are going to be welcoming of your birds and that they understand what is involved with your birds.
Yeah, and Kathy brings up a good point. Are there other pets in the home? And no matter what your because so your in-laws or your family members love their pets just as much, I know it's hard to believe, as you love your birds. And they're gonna tell you, "Oh no, I have the sweetest dog ever. I have the best cat ever. He never goes after anything else." Well, you really have to think about have they been exposed to birds before? Because, and that's a calculated risk that if you choose to take it, you choose to take it. But if you know there are other pets in the home, you really want to think about, is this going to be a safe environment for my bird? And it looks like we're
Well,
talking about La Quinta is bird safe. Two people have
oh,
said, Janice and Shelley have both said that. So,
okay.
all right.
Well, the other thing to consider with if there are other pets in the home, obviously you're going to think about dogs, cats who may not have been exposed to birds. If they have other birds in their home, chances are good they're going to be familiar with birds, they're going to understand what goes into taking care of them. But of course, that is then going to pose a greater risk of potential transmission of disease or parasites if perhaps their birds have something that you don't want yours to pick up, or vice versa. So, all of these are going to be things that you just want to keep in mind.
Right. So, and I think the thing is too, so let's talk about pets, let's to other pets. Let's talk about small children as well. So, if your bird has never been exposed to small children or those small children have never been exposed to pets, I think that's and bad ferrets. Shelley, you're hurting ferret people's feelings right now. Shelley doesn't mean that they're bad. She just means that they're not a great mix with parents. Um, but small children, so you've got to, again, is this something that you're going to be able to maintain the safety of of the birds if there are small children in the home? And yes, Nick, we'll definitely do that because I think that would be really cool is to thank La Quinta for being friendly.
Now, I think we are going to cover small children in just a minute when you're at your destination. But Robin, I think that is a great point to bring it up now when it comes to planning, because if you know there is going to be a large number of small children and maintaining the safety of the children, or more importantly, the safety of your bird is not feasible. Did y'all see what I did there? I did that on purpose. If you can't do that reasonably, you may need to look at possibly boarding your bird. Maybe you're not going to be able to travel with that bird. That could be an inhibiting factor if there are those children there, which are going to pose a health risk. So again, just pay attention to those things. We want to make sure that traveling for the holidays and seeing our families is as stress-free and relaxing as possible when it comes to our birds, because if your family is anything like mine, the family visit itself will introduce enough stress.
This is true. We don't want to add any stress to holidays. Um, so we've got that build up. We know what we're, the kind of things we're looking out for, and we need to plan way ahead for. So now we're talking about we've decided we're going to do it. We're taking the plunge. We're going to travel with our birds to, you know, Aunt Susie's house. So what do we need to have? What do we need to consider?
Well, for me, the first thing that I'm going to need if I want to travel with a bird is something for my bird to travel in. So a travel carrier is going to. Nick put me in a cage. Nick, I can tell you right now that this cage is not big enough for me.
That's
Um,
right. I'm feeling kind of cramped. But my door's open. Ha ha ha.
I am totally going to bite Nick as soon as I get out of here. You want to make sure you're paying attention to your travel carrier, though. You want to make sure it is appropriate for your species. Obviously, this kind of carrier for me would not be appropriate in a number of different ways. It's not big enough. and it doesn't look like a sturdy enough material. I am willing to bet I could break through this carrier with minimal effort. I have heard far too many horror stories from people who have put a cockatoo or a macaw in a plastic dog crate and intended to drive 6 hours away, only to get half an hour away. And now there's an angry bird that has escaped its confines of its carrier and is taking over the car. Please don't do that.
Well, so I got to interrupt because you said for me, there has to be a carrier. I want to say for everyone, there has to be a carrier because let's be honest. We talked about, what's legal, what's not legal, what's smart and what's not smart. Because, you know, traveling with a bird is okay, it's stressful for the bird, it can be stressful for you. And now you've got this bird and it's not contained in any way, shape, or form in your vehicle. I'm sorry. Have you all driven on the highway on a holiday? Have you it's bumper to bumper traffic and now the bird is out and decides I don't really want to be doing what I'm doing. And now you're trying to deal with the bird. It's so important, and Karen talks about where you put it and how you arrange it. And that was when we were talking about that they're not flipping forward when you accelerate or brake. All of those things are going to, they're things you got to think about. You may be the best driver in the world, but when somebody cuts you off, um, what's going to happen? If that bird's not in a carrier, it's just not safe to transport a bird in your vehicle. And I'm sure I'll get some pushback on this one because I know there are people that do it. But I want to say for me, and I think for you too, Jack, that it's not a matter of maybe you should have a carrier, but you have to have a carrier.
Oh yeah, no. I want to be clear. I did not mean for that to come across as it was optional. I rather meant for me that is one of the very first considerations I'm going to make. Um,
Okay.
what type of carrier? And that's going to be a highly dependent question because I actually have a variety of different carriers that I use for different birds in different situations. If we're making a 5-minute trip to the vet's office, I've got a small little cute carrier that doesn't have a food and water bowl in it because I don't want to sign up for that level of mess for what's ultimately going to be less than an hour. But if you're going to be going away for several days, you cannot get away with not having the option of having food and water available for your animals. You need to figure out what carrier and what features you need and are going to be appropriate for your bird and the duration of travel. Obviously, the longer you go, the closer you're going to want to get to their regular housing.
Yeah. Yeah, and along with it, and it's a safety factor. And Lori, that absolutely, if you get rear-ended, the bird could hit the windshield. And I know Steve mentioned seatbelt the carrier in if you do. You just, I mean, it's common. A lot of this is common sense, but it's important to remember. Yes.
If you seatbelt the carrier in, and yes, you should secure the carrier, make sure that you do so in a way that, um, I don't know, hypothetically, an umbrella cockatoo cannot chew through half of your seatbelt.
Yeah, yeah, that's important. That you
Yeah.
so when the doors are closed, Nick, you may need to close Jack's door again. I don't know. When the doors are closed, you don't want to, yeah, you don't want to put the seatbelt right where Jack can get to it. That's not a good idea. So yeah, be smart about how you do that, but secure them.
Yes.
Melissa says she bought seatbelt covers. Definitely.
Okay.
There's so much that, goes into it but it's important. You do want to think about and those it's nice that we think about those things ahead of time. So again, you're not I can tell you, I just drove to South Carolina from New Hampshire, and driving across the GW Bridge, I wouldn't want a bird that was out in the car with me, quite honestly. And Shelley says, turn your airbag off. Um, if that's where if the bird is somewhere where an airbag is going to inflate, that small creature is probably not going to win in an airbag kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so all of those considerations with your carrier, just go ahead and plan that. And as a number of people are pointing out now, again, this was one of the first things we pointed out in this session. Working on that crate training before you need it is going to be critically
Mhm.
important. Depending on your bird's history with training, your bird's history with interacting with you, um, crate training may be something. If you have a bird that has a great relationship with you, steps up, steps down like a champ, targets like a champ, you might be able to get it before the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, a week away from now. But if you're starting with a bird that is a rescue bird that you just got in, and it only half the time lunges at the cage bars when you walk by, that may not be realistic. You may need several months of working with that bird to have it comfortable going in and out of its crate. Again, you don't want the crate to be a terrifying place. We're going to be
Right.
changing things up for our animals, anyways. Let's not add any more stress than we need to.
Mhm. And the food, and you've got to think about how are you going to provide that food? How are you going to clean that out if it's an extra long trip? I mean, so again, we're talking about birds being free in a car. So you don't want to have to open the crate door, slam the food in and shut it again when you get to that rest area. How are you managing that? Because let's be honest, you've got a bird that's been in a crate for a while, and then you stop to do whatever you need to do at the rest area, grab that snack or whatever, and now you're going to say, "Oh, I'll just take him out for a second." Now you've got a bird in a place that it doesn't know, and they've been in this crate for a while. What's going to happen then? You really want to think about, how am I going to manage this bird in the crate for the duration of the travel time? When you get to a hotel, little bit, it's more manageable than at the rest area. So you want to think about, how are you going to handle that as you go?
Right. And one thing I try to encourage people to think about with just about everything that comes to taking care of your birds, please think about how you're going to clean that item. And I
Mhm.
have no problem, telling everyone right now, I have multiple carriers for widgets. I have one of them that I really like because it's cute. It's like it's got a nice floral pattern on it. It looks nice. It's got mesh sides. People can see my bird. It is a pain in the butt to clean out. It is definitely not a carrier that I would use for any extended trip. And it's usually not a carrier that I use all that often to begin with, because again, it is so difficult to clean out. So think about how you're going to be cleaning something, because again, you don't want to try to be figuring things out when you're traveling and you maybe don't have access to the same cleaning supplies that you do at home. You don't have access to all of your stuff. It's going to add to that stress level.
Mhm. And there's some good ideas here. Nick suggested using fruit and veggies that are high in water content, so that you're providing that hydration that way, because water does spill. I mean, let's be honest. There's nobody, and if you've got that car that glides along, and it never goes over bumps and takes those bumps really well. eh, Congratulations, because I haven't found that one yet. But use fresh fruits and veggies. And then Shelly talked about, she mounted the food and water on the door so that she could just slip it through into the crate, so that these weren't birds that she could take out. She picked, did this long trip, and they weren't something, the birds weren't birds that she was willing or comfortable taking out for their safety. So she mounted the fruit on the front. It's that creativity that, again, you try to take care of before Wednesday when you're ready to travel.
Well, and make sure that you have a plan in place for when you get to your destination of how you're going to feed your birds. Because again, if you're traveling over holidays, maybe grocery stores won't be open. Maybe you won't have the same access to things. I'll tell you guys right now, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I will have already been working on prepping stuff for Thanksgiving. The
Mhm.
fridge will be full of stuff that'll be used for Thanksgiving dinner. If you want to eat something in our house the day before Thanksgiving, you can order a pizza, you can order some other kind of food. Don't touch anything that's in the fridge because it is occupied. So make sure that you just have that plan in place.
Yeah, and when you're at Aunt Sue's house and you go into the fridge and you pull out the fresh green beans or the squash and you're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna give a little piece of this to Widget." I don't think that's gonna work. I just, because Aunt Sue probably has that squash earmarked for a wonderful casserole with stuff on it, and you gotta be careful, you want to be comfortable where you're going, but at the same time, you wanna be prepared so that they're gonna want you back again. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. This is
um,
the other place where Jack and I have talked about pellets. So, traveling with a bag of pellets is a lot easier than traveling with a whole cooler full of chop. You can do it, but honestly, the pellets, then you don't have to find the refrigerator when you get where you're going. Ziploc baggies are wonderful. And Adrian also mentioned information. This is something. So Jack and I have talked to you at length. We've had whole sessions about record keeping. So if you've done that and you've got your folder with it, you've got, your information, take it with you because, if something happens along the way, if you get there and somebody else needs to take your bird in for services or needs to get to the veterinarian, you've got it all right there. You don't have to be looking it up, seeing if you can find it.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
so many different things that you should be taking with you. One which we kind of go back and forth on because it's going to depend on your bird and what's going on with them. Um, I would say you definitely need to pay attention to enrichment. How are you going to be
Mhm.
enriching your bird when you get there? And the reason this gets a little bit complicated is because when you're moving your bird, they're in their travel carrier, they're going to a new location, they're interacting with new people. Realistically, you are probably providing more in enrichment than that bird gets on a regular basis, possibly too much so. So, we may need to be using enrichment for two different things. It may be,
Mhm.
yeah, everyone's running out of the house for the day, they're all going to go ice skating or looking at Christmas trees, or I don't know, Robin, what kind of things do y'all do where it's cold? You're going to go out in the house and enjoy the snow. If your bird's left alone all day, it may need enrichment for mental stimulation. If your bird is getting overstimulated, there's just so much going on at home. It could be that you want those things that are familiar for your bird to just give them a sense of stability. What do you think, Robin?
Mhm. I agree as far as both on both of those counts that you're not there just to play with your bird. You're there to visit with family or friends or whatever, and you owe that to yourself as well. So giving your bird something to do in that time when you may not be interacting with your bird is really important. And dropping that stress level during the travel. I like foot toys for that because I feel like you don't have to for two things. One, while you're traveling, they go into yes.
Oh no, I'm just going to see if you're going to hit the one that I think of.
I think they go into the cage easily, into the crate easily. It's not a big deal. You don't have to figure out some big hanging system. And then when you get to your destination, chances are there's not going to be this, full-fledged aviary or cage where you get there and you're going to hang all this stuff. And again, Aunt Sue's probably not going to be thrilled if you start hanging things from her ceiling fan. So that's why I like foot toys.
So I particularly don't like hanging toys in travel carriers. And the reason for that is when you're traveling, you're going to be picking that up, you're going to be moving it around, it's moving in a car. You're going to have to be really, really careful to make sure that this hanging toy is not just swinging and hitting your bird in the head every time you hit a bump. So make sure you're paying attention to things like that. If you have a large enough carrier and you have one off to one side, you know that it's not going to be hitting your bird, it's not going to be stressing them out. That's one thing. But again, that's going to be coming back to that question of what carrier did you pick for this trip? What,
Mhm.
how much space do you have? I know Kathy was asking the question of what if you go somewhere and they don't have a cage there? And I think that's definitely got to be something that you keep in mind when picking your travel carrier. If your bird is
Mhm.
going to be traveling in an enclosure with no other cage to go to, no bigger space, you want to make sure that that travel carrier is going to be appropriate to house them for the time that you're there.
Mhm. And, that's something, so if it's large enough to house the bird when you get to your destination, at that point, maybe you put a favorite hanging toy in. Because then it's not gonna be banging around, it's not gonna hit them in the head. And the other thing I worry about, Jack, with, hanging toys in a carrier is entanglement. You're
Yeah.
you're dealing with a limited space, and you're also we talk about choice too, and you're also not giving that bird that choice whether to interact or not. If you hang a toy, even if it's a favorite toy, you hang a toy in a full-size cage, then it's I can interact or not. In a carrier, there's not enough space to not interact, to avoid if they really need to. And so I think that's important. And I think, Kathy, as far as, if you've got that crate, that's now appropriate to be housed in when you get to your destination, you also want to maybe discuss that with whoever you're staying with. you know, am I going to have a space where I can take the bird out just, for some one-on-one time with that bird? Maybe, your room, it's okay that the bird comes out. And you also have to be respectful of your destination, that, if your bird poops, you got to clean it up. You've got to have, maybe you bring a sheet with you that you put on the ground so that you can clean that up. It's really, it's a again, do you want to be invited back again?
Um, well, so before we dive into the that socialization and that aspect, because we definitely wanted to cover that. One other thing I just wanted to draw attention to while we're talking about enrichment, different toys to provide your bird, pay attention to the type of perching that you have available in your travel carriers. It's going to be a bigger deal in a travel carrier because you don't have as many options.
Right.
We usually try to provide our birds a variety of different textures and diameters and materials for perching, and you may not have the same options when you're traveling. So make sure you make those decisions based on what is best for your bird. And what is best for your bird may not be what is best for my bird, for Robin's bird, for,
Mhm.
the bird down the street that's always getting into trouble that I'm always talking about. If that bird jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? Um, make sure you plan for your bird.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, with the enrichment, with the perching, you don't want to go out and buy a whole bunch of new stuff either, because we're talking about a change of environment. And so if you kind of stick to things that work for your bird, that's the best way to go, because it's, oh, I bought you all these new toys to keep you excited on our trip. Well, those toys are just super scary and I don't want to deal with it. And I'm stressed to start with. So you wanna go with the tried and true. You wanna go with the, not the biggest, heaviest toy you've ever had. That doesn't go, I mean, again, common sense, that doesn't go in the crate, but you wanna go with, and perching too, that that they're going to be comfortable on for a long duration. You've got to make sure it's a perch that either they've used before and you've had good experiences with, or something that's not the concrete perch, not the petty perch. That's not what you want in your travel crate, because a bird standing on something like that for hours and hours at a time, is just not a good situation.
You're right. So all of those are things to just take into consideration. And we know we're probably throwing a lot of things at you to take into consideration. And the goal here is to avoid any potential issues. For me, I would say one of the biggest instances of potential issues when you get to a new location is new people. And how are those new people going to interact with your bird and vice versa?
I just need to interrupt you for 1 second, Jack, because love this suggestion from Chris, using fresh browse in the crates when they travel. So if you can collect some browse that at your house that you know how it's been, that it hasn't been sprayed or that it's safe, bird safe browse. And for those of you that don't know, browse is just kind of another word for branches and branches with leaves on them that you've cut down. That's a great idea, Chris. Thank you very much for bringing that up.
Well, yeah, cuttings of edible plants are always going to be great. And I love browse, but especially as we get to winter, I try to hold back from talking about it as much because Robin gets mad at me because I have so many options and she doesn't. And like we'll hit the middle of winter and I've got things like banana, bamboo, ginger that she's never going to have in great amounts. I have hibiscus that is flowering in the middle of winter, which so yeah, Robin hates me a little bit when we get to winter. So that's why I try not to talk about browse. But I'll tell you guys right now, browse is one of my favorite forms of enrichment because it can be so many different things. You can use it in so many different ways, and it's the most natural thing for your birds to interact with.
Yeah, well, Chris is that Florida guy, so that's part of that too. So, I'm hating on Chris just a little bit too right now, but it's okay. Uh, so I'm sorry, you were talking about socialization.
Yes. So when you get to where you're going, um, it's pretty safe to assume that there will be people there who are not familiar with birds. Um, they may not know what the rules are with birds. They may not know what's going to be acceptable for them to do. They may not realize that something they've seen you do is not something they can do. I'll tell you guys, the very first big fight that I ever got in with my partner Justin, he I came home from work and he told me, your bird bit me. And I said, how? He's like, I don't know, your bird just bit me. And I'm like, well, no, because she is in her cage over on the other side of the room. What did you do wrong? Which apparently is not what he wanted to hear. So then he explained, oh, well, I just wanted to try to be friends with her and take her out of the cage, and she bit me. And then he showed me where she supposedly bit him. And I pointed out that since it didn't even draw blood from a bird that large, she didn't really bite him. She just very calmly said, get out of my cage. And he didn't react well to that either. And avoid that situation by just clearly going over the rules with the people in your family of what is going to be acceptable, what is not going to be acceptable when it comes to interacting with that bird.
Yeah, there's the don't, just reach in the cage. The other one is, no, my bird does not need to eat everything that's on your plate. It's not okay to give my bird this, this, and this because, we get stuck in that, oh, but come on, it's all fresh. It's just a little treat for the holiday. No, it's not okay. If you ask me, and you may not get invited back because now you're being the hard guy, but if you say, ask me first, and if it's okay, then yes, we can talk about how you should give that food to my bird, and if you should give that food to my bird.
Right. And, Lori pointed out, we've had a couple of people point out, sometimes people want to know about your birds. So don't be completely dismissive. You have the opportunity to create this a teaching experience, a learning experience. Maybe you can get someone interested in birds. the more people that are interested in birds, the more people that are taking care of birds, the better all of aviculture is going to be. Because for some people, birds are still this very weird thing that they don't understand why people keep them as pets. They don't see those amazing interactions that you only get with a bird that you don't get with other animals. So,
Mhm.
using those experiences, remember that's going to help you and your bird in this particular situation, but you can also argue that it is potentially helping the future of aviculture. You like how I did that like reach for like the blue sky moment there of like that you are promoting the future.
I love it. I think it's so true. Shelly wants your family, Jack, because her family would never listen to her. I'm thinking there are days that he might give them to you. I don't know. Um, just saying. But, and it is a matter of so maybe you need to explain why, and it's my body, my choice. Cody wants a cookie. Um, so Diane's sister clearly doesn't listen either. So she made a cute sign. And I think it's a matter of people sometimes are dealing with bigger animals as pets, bigger than our birds. And so well, it's just a little piece. It's just a small piece. Well, okay, but let's look at the size comparison. You give your dog a small piece and it might have an impact, it might not. You give the bird a small piece and it's a big piece. And so, I think it's you don't want to be hardcore, and maybe you bring a bag of treats. And so then the person says, can I give my your bird this? Well, no, but how if you'd like to try giving him a treat, how about giving him this? So there's something you don't have to just shut them down and say, no, you can't interact, because like Jack said, this is an opportunity to educate, and Lori said it as well. But it's really, give them something appropriate that they can feed your bird.
Well, and so as Karen just pointed out, wherever she's gone, there's always that one person that leans over the bird's cage and says, hello, 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 9 billion times. And something that I have to take into consideration with some of my birds, and this is part of the rules for their socialization, some of my birds are used in presentations and they are trained to do certain behaviors on particular cues. The way that I have gotten that is by using reinforcement, which means I cue a behavior, they do a behavior, I reinforce the behavior, so there's a greater likelihood the bird will do that behavior in the future. If you have family members that are cueing behaviors, maybe they even start getting some of those behaviors and they are not reinforcing them appropriately, it can be a lot of work to get those behaviors back on cue. Uh,
Mhm.
and Robin and I have talked about this numerous times. There is a point where your bird no longer wants its primary reinforcers. It doesn't want food items. It's full. So then, if you get somebody that's just sitting there, hello, 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 they are, best case scenario, just mildly irritating your bird. They are potentially building latency in those behaviors. They are
Mhm.
possibly destroying those trained behaviors that you have worked on. So pay attention to things like that as well.
Yeah. And the other thing is there's going to be that cousin who had a little bit too much to drink, and they want to teach your bird inappropriate words. And so, that's when you have the conversation. Watch this, it's super cool. This is what he can do. So the same way we redirect our birds at times, or we redirect our animals if there's a behavior that we really don't like. Okay, so take all the training ideas that you guys have listened to for weeks and weeks with Jack and I, and now use them on the drunk cousin, because you you've got to change that behavior. And just telling that drunk cousin, no, don't do that, that's not right, not going to get you anywhere.
Well, and I'm just going to say this, and I will be that person. I don't really care. Um, Training is going to work on your family members. These same exact approaches that you use for training your animals are going to be appropriate. Well, they'll argue and say it's not appropriate. They will be effective in working with your family members. When you are dealing with intoxicated family members, they're going to be more effective. That, you know, finding new behaviors and reinforcing those behaviors, that can be, how you want to do that. If you have a family member that's trying to get your bird to do something ridiculous because they want attention, don't give them attention for that, and instead find something else that they're doing, and oh my god, that looks amazing, here, have another cocktail. Find a reinforcer that's going to work for that family member. Find a behavior that you can work on reinforcing instead. Same exact approach to training. This is why part of my family doesn't like me.
Aw, well, give that part to Shelley. Just saying. Um, so, there are a lot of pitfalls that you can run into. Yeah, Lori, everyone thinks they can hold the bird. Yeah, no. That's when, natural consequences sometimes do work, but we like to not do that because then everybody hates birds and it's awful. So, again, a little bit of training sometimes helps. And but there's a couple other things we wanted to talk about. This is obviously a topic that has been fun and hopefully helpful, but other things you need to remember to bring with you. Medications, if your bird is on any kind of medication, that first aid kit, because although we don't want to think about it, we really need to remember that something could go wrong. And I know back in the comments, I think it was Candy mentioned, see if you can find an avian vet where you're going.
Yeah.
It's a shot in the dark that you're going to be able to get a hold of them. But if you're not traveling on a holiday, it it's good information to have, or even an
Well, and
emergency vet that has a clue.
yeah, I was going to say there is a major difference between a vet in that area that's willing to see birds and an emergency vet that is willing to see
Mhm.
birds. They're not the same thing. Now, hopefully, you won't need that information, but you're going to be better off having it and not needing it than needing it and not having it. So, definitely things like that. If you want different types of enrichment, Robin mentioned those foot toys, which I love. I think they're a great way to provide enrichment. But a lot of foot toys, they're smaller toys. They can be dismantled by birds, especially birds with bigger beaks, pretty quickly.
Mhm.
So, do you need to have a supply of foot toys that you can give them to keep them entertained? Do you
Right.
need things like travel perches? If it is allowable for your bird to be out of its enclosure at whatever your destination is, things like travel perches can give you the opportunity to interact with guests or people in your home, people at that home, and your bird, but in a way that your bird is comfortable with. I've shown you guys how to build tabletop perches that my birds
Yeah.
they get really used to, and they're one of my favorite things to showcase, to utilize. So I definitely recommend those.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great idea. Those PVC travel perches are, I mean, they're so easy. They're lightweight. It's not like it's another, 50-pound thing that you have to schlep in and out of the hotel when you're going in and out, or into wherever you're staying. So it's just, again, it's about being prepared. Um, that's a great idea, Julie. A chain of people that just in case you need help, if you're taking a long distance trip, things that places you can stop, and maybe the other thing you could do too. And I just thought of this as we were talking is trying to find an avian supply, an avian specialty store where you're going, and just in case you run out of something, or you know the bird goes through every single toy you brought, or goes through the perch while he's in the carrier, you can go somewhere and get a replacement. So that is important. And Cindy just said she can't find hotels that take birds. Cindy, at the beginning of the conversation, we had a lot of people say that La Quinta will accept birds in most locations. I would call ahead first, but
Yes.
here we are. We're doing the holiday recommendation for right now is La Quinta. So, all right, really quickly because we've gone. Jack, did you have something to say about that?
No, I think,
Okay.
obviously, there are probably even more things to plan, to take into consideration. I would say just remember, the more planning and things that you have figured out beforehand, the less you're going to have to figure out on the fly when you get there. So,
Mhm.
however much planning you have is going to be better than not having it.
And there are gonna be things that come up, anyway. Olivia says take pictures, of those take a picture of the hard copy documents so that when you open that window and they blow out the window and it's snowing and they get in the rain and the snow and they get ruined, you have a backup. So Olivia definitely, she's referring to hurricane. I got blizzard going on, so that's where I'm going with that. Um, but so there, and I love, I always read through the comments, both Jack and I do after the live streams. And tonight, especially, there's been a lot of great information in the comments. And so I think if you have a chance and you haven't been able to follow along with those, take a few minutes and go through the comments because they really, I think there's some really helpful information for people.
Well, and if you guys have other people that could benefit from this information, people in your bird club, friends with birds, encourage them to tune in for the Friday Night Flock Talks as well, because while the videos are going to be rewatchable for now until they're not, I don't know when that time will be, but I assume that something will happen at some point. I don't know. If you participate in the conversation, we have so many people in the conversation that bring up other pieces of information, other things to think about. Robin and I bring you what we like to feel are two researched, informed opinions, but there's still more information. There may be particular circumstances that apply to you that don't apply to either Robin and I. So we're happy to have those voices in the chat as well, helping other people when it comes to taking the best possible care of their birds.
And Nick, if you can put that banner up again. So all the travel goes out the window. You just can't do it. It's not going to work. Look to somewhere like Avian Suites. We spoke with Karen a couple weeks ago now, Karen Anderson from Avian Suites, and we talked about what to look for in a boarding facility. So if you figure out that this is not going to work for you, maybe, it can't be a road trip, it has to be an airline trip and you can't nail down the jello that is the airline regulations right now, somewhere like Avian Suites. That's the kind of place you want to go. And I don't even know. I can almost guarantee that Karen is probably pretty full right now. But Avian Suites or somewhere similar, which might be tough to find because they do a great job. But that's what, the other option is. So, and then we also wanted to talk a little bit about, real briefly, when you get home from this epic
Yeah,
road trip that you have taken, things might be a little bit different.
yeah. I think you need to pay attention to any changes that you observe in your bird, because they could be something that you just lightly have to deal with. Obviously, it could just be a sign of some stress in your bird, or it could be a sign of something far worse. So pay attention to things like changes in appetite, attitude, general behavior. Anything that seems weird or abnormal, we've encouraged you guys before. We'll do it again. Make note of it. Pay attention to those things, because that's going to be really, really important.
hmm Um, and then, when it's easier to ask those questions than to kind of uh, consider what's going on. Don't just say, I don't know what happened. Maybe some of your behaviors that you've trained break down a little bit. Maybe you haven't had the opportunity to keep up with that training. And you want to think about, that may be the cause for some backsliding. And the other thing, too, I mean, do you agree as far as that's concerned, Jack?
Yeah, I think, especially when you get to traveling, when you get to anything stressful or really big changes, with trained behaviors, you can really see that maybe your animal didn't have as good a handle on that behavior as you thought they did, and that's where you can run into problems.
All right, so they've got a waiting list for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and New Year's. If you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, there's the San Francisco Bird Hotel, an amazing facility. I've been there myself to speak, and they do a great job there. And Olivia mentioned that some avian vets will also board birds. Some avian specialty stores board birds. I know Kiko's Toy Chest in Tacoma, Washington, does some boarding. I again don't know what their status is right now. There are options out there, but you
Yeah,
know, if you can't travel with your bird, do your research and figure out where you're going to take them.
yeah. Um, Now, if you do travel with your bird, another thing you need to take into consideration when you get home is, did your bird encounter any risks? And that could be a variety of different things. That could be if there are other pets in the home, is there a risk of potential disease or parasite transmission? Were they around a 3-year-old that was handing them a cookie every 5 minutes? Um, Paying attention to things like what your bird was eating, what your bird was exposed to, what was in the house with your bird. All of those are going to be questions that you need to ask, and maybe your bird needs to be seen by a vet when you get home.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work that's involved in this, but it can be very satisfying traveling with your pets, and I think it you got to do your research, you got to do your preparation, but it's doable. So, anything else, Jack?
So the last thing that we just want to encourage people to do when you get home, if you've been traveling with your bird, look back at your trip and think, is there anything that would have made traveling with that bird easier or less stressful? That could be things such as, if your bird was better crate trained, would that have helped? If they were trained for other behaviors, if they were desensitized to their carrier, if you had certain items like that travel perch, different food items, any of those things, knowing what would have made it easier is going to help you in the future. And have that
Mhm.
discussion with anyone who is involved, anyone that can help you figure out that list of things as soon as possible while it's still fresh on your mind, so you'll be able to better plan for the future.
Yeah, I think that debrief is really important when you get home. And you're absolutely right, Lori. Having birds with us can help our stress levels too. Sometimes it's that calming effect, but definitely, don't, if it doesn't go flawlessly, remember that you're dealing with living creatures. You know, you can make all the plans you want, you can create, be all prepared, but these are living, breathing beings that, it doesn't always go as planned. So, um, just I wish you all wonderful luck if you are traveling with your birds this holiday season. And maybe, you haven't planned ahead enough for Thanksgiving, but the later winter holidays are out there. And if you're going to travel, do a little bit of work, get prepared, and really enjoy yourself and enjoy that interaction and time you spend with your birds and any of your pets. And this, we talked about birds primarily tonight, but this also applies to traveling with other pets. Is Gunner traveling for the holidays?
No, we do the holidays here, so Gunner gets to stay here on the couch.
Okay. So he's looking forward to that. But all right, you guys. Again, thank you so much for listening every Friday night and hanging out with us. And your interaction is what really makes this work for us. So we want to thank you again for being here. And I know that I say a lot of thanks when it comes to the group of you that are on every single week. And I love that you're bringing friends with you so that our things that we're thankful for get bigger every week. So thank you very much. And Jack, anything?
Yeah, I again, this is so much fun because of you guys, because of the way that you interact with us, because of the way that you share things with us. I'll tell you guys right now that Robin and I will get notes from people and we share that information with each other. We share, when you guys have successes because of something we've talked about, when you are able to share that you were able to accomplish something new with your bird because of something we talked about. Like, that makes our day, and it makes this so much fun, so worthwhile for us. So thank you guys so much for being a part of it, for bringing what you bring to this, because obviously, yeah, Robin and I are enjoying this, but there are so many people who get to watch these videos, who get to interact with the chat, and they are able to better provide for their birds because of that. And that makes me so incredibly happy. And I'm so thankful that we have such a great community of people willing to help each other.
Ditto, absolutely ditto. So next week, day after Thanksgiving, we are going to have some fun and games. We'll maybe, I don't know, that is not happening next Friday. Because that's going to be leftovers on next Friday. I'm just saying. But we're going to play some games, have some fun, maybe learn a little bit more about our feathered friends. And so we'll see how that goes. Everyone enjoy yourselves. Have a wonderful holiday and take care. We will hopefully see you next Friday.